Hi everybody, Professor Snart checking in as we continue with our English 1102 online course. So we'll just take a quick look at our due dates. I'm recording this on Friday morning here on, excuse me, on Friday, April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day. So we're just finishing up Unit 3 and moving into Unit 4. And like I said in an earlier video, and what you might be kind of experiencing now is a lot of our earlier units are kind of piecing these smaller parts of the puzzle together that will bring together fully once we get down to our actual essay units. So if you're feeling like there's kind of like a lot of little pieces, that's sort of intentionally how the course is put together, so that we do a lot of those little things kind of just out of the context of the larger full essay, and then once we've had that practice time of doing them, we put them together in the full essays that we write towards the end of the course. So Unit 3 is kind of a good example of one of those units where there's a lot of content pieces to it, and not necessarily a huge assignment piece that's attached to it. So like I said before, when it comes to my grading of whether it's the paragraph assignment here, or of course once we get to the essays, it's these concepts and basic kind of information that we're covering in the course that I'll be looking for you to apply. So again, it's almost like you engaging with this content, even if there's not always a quiz to do or a thing to write or a discussion board, is sort of like coming to class, and you take notes or you participate in those activities, and then there's some assessment to see if you were engaged, did you understand it, and can you now apply it. So of course the temptation might be to skip over the stuff and find just like, what do I have to do, thinking that you're working more quickly. But clearly that would be like sort of like skipping class and then showing up for the test and hoping that you do well. Probably not going to happen, right? So the shape of an essay or shape of a paragraph idea is actually presented in a number of different formats here through the video, kind of a more static thing with just the same visual, a longer explanation, examples of how this might look in an actual paragraph, very much of the style, right, that will show up in the essays that we write for our class. So again, it's lots of the same thing being explained, partly, maybe mainly, because this is one of the most sort of central concepts for us in terms of our composition class. Like, this is the main composition idea that I really need to see that you've worked through the material, understand, and can then apply in the paragraph assignment for this unit, but also, of course, for the essays themselves. So the idea is, like it's explained here, basically that one of the most challenging parts of writing an essay is after, of course, you've got basic sentence level mechanics correct. So if that's a problem, then that's sort of more of an individual thing that you've got to work on by contacting me, working with the writing center, careful proofreading. That's sort of like being able to construct an effective sentence is understood that we can do that already. So then the challenge is, how do we put those sentences all together so that the more general ones are connected in effective ways to the much more specific ones? How does this look in a larger essay? How does it look in a particular paragraph? And so I like this stick figure, and again, I'm kind of going to repeat what's already presented in the unit here, for how it suggests the way that we move from the most general, kind of where his arms are outstretched, down to a thesis statement, which might be 1 or 2 sentences. So we introduce maybe a general topic, we talk about the authors or works we're going to discuss, then we have our thesis, so notice we're narrowing, and then, of course, there's going to be variation a little bit in the body, but notice how everything kind of stays within the bounds that we've laid out, not just even in our big topic, but in our particular thesis. And then, of course, once we get to the end of our essay, we get a little broader by kind of restating the main idea. But notice that nowhere do we talk about big, kind of, in the history of the world, there have always been things. That sort of stuff is just way too broad for our kind of essay, and especially for the length that we're writing, which is really not going to be that big. Okay, so the other fun thing about the stick figure visual idea here is that it repeats. It's good for the whole essay, but it's also good for every body paragraph. Intro and conclusion paragraphs work a little bit differently, but for every body paragraph, we kind of do the same thing, just not as many sentences. So we have to start out with a kind of topic sentence, again, 1 or 2 sentences, maybe a topic, and we refine it a bit. Then we provide our examples and explanations, so we're staying really narrowly focused. And then we transition from one idea to the next down in the what we call conclusion, or really like over here, the transition part. So it's interesting to note how that basic shape informs or it describes the entire essay, but also individual body paragraphs in the essay. So one of the things that's really telling for me is if I'm reading your paragraph or I'm looking at an essay and you start a paragraph with a quotation, that's clearly not what we're trying to do here, because we need to understand what the idea, what the topic is. So you can't start with a quotation, right? That would be the narrow part of the stick figure's body here, and then sort of explain it later. That would give him like a big sort of diamond shape in his body, and his arms would be straight up. He'd look all kind of crazy going on. So again, it's not complicated, I don't think. It's actually fairly easy to look at, especially in theory, just on the slide or, you know, in the video here. But the challenge then is to put it into practice. So that's why we start with just a paragraph assignment for this, this unit, where you get the opportunity to write what amounts to a body paragraph that would show up or could show up in a longer essay. And what I'm looking for here is the application of the idea, right, that you've covered, that we've covered in the material here earlier in the unit. And then, of course, another kind of focus as we go is going to be Mla citation. Not the most exciting stuff in the world, but really, really important for our course as 1102, kind of the research course, and of course, thinking about 1102 as ultimately the end of the longer composition sequence from 1101 to 1102. So Mla citation, both the in-text part and building a works cited page, is really, really crucial for you to understand. It's sort of a glass half full, half empty kind of a thing. There's really a lot of weight put on this fairly like straightforward, kind of boring aspect of composition in our course, because it's sort of that important in the context of what we're doing here. So there's a lot riding on it. That's the glass half empty. The glass half full version of that is there's a lot riding on it, but doing Mla citation correctly is largely a matter of just following existing examples, whether they're in our course, like are laid out here, whether they're in resources, like you can find in our Mla citation link over here. So it's nothing that you have to memorize or some complicated mathematical formula you've got to, you know, internalize or anything like that. It's really just a matter of being aware of the resources and then following the examples and models when it comes time to do it in the context of like the paragraph we're doing for this unit, or of course, you know, for those larger essays that we get to. So again, notice that there's just lots of little pieces here that we're beginning to bring together that ultimately will take us towards those higher point value essays that we're working on. So then I'm going to take us into Unit 4 really quickly here, which is kind of more of the same thing. You'll notice even the unit title kind of says, well, yeah, we're going to talk about thesis statements, we'll look at sample essay, writing process, all just like pieces of the puzzle that we're putting together. So there's a sample student essay of the kind that we'll be writing for our class, and then there's a quiz attached to that, so you can find the PDF here. And again, have it open, you know, as you do the essay analysis quiz here. It's not a huge amount of points. It's not about memorizing the essay, like why would we do that? But noticing things that are going on there that you're going to want to, at least in theory or generally speaking, kind of mirror or mimic when it comes time for you to write your essay. Again, you can look for things like tone, the way it puts forward a really clear thesis, how it uses quotation, for example, how it manages primary versus secondary texts, all stuff that's going to be important for us to learn as we go along. Then there's just some more content stuff about thesis statements, again, really important for us as we get towards writing our first essay. The writing process, again, not stuff I'm going to spend a ton of time here on, but really just stuff to look at, work through, think about, reflect on, and then make sure that when it comes to assessment time, whether it's paragraph, discussion board, essay, whatever, that you are showing evidence that you have like put into place a writing process, that you have an effective thesis based on what we've learned in our class here. There's a quick quiz, another quick quiz here connected to this elements of the essay reading. Again, kind of looking at examples or thinking about how essays work. Again, open book, right? Nothing supposed to be super challenging here, just having you work through the material. So again, when the points really matter, you can do it successfully. And then we have in Unit 4, sort of continuing on from our literary reading from Unit 3, a flight patterns discussion board. Useful just to get you thinking, kind of reading effectively, which is something, of course, that we want to do for all of the things that we read, so that when it comes time, again, to write that essay, we have like lots of possible ideas. We've thought about different ways that that themes are working in a story, or characters develop, or how we might propose a topic and then connect it to or support it with evidence from the text. So much of that depends on close reading. So again, the discussion board is focused on flight patterns, but really the skill that it's having you practice is that skill of close reading and sort of critical and creative thinking about the works that we're doing for class. Okay, so I'm going to cut myself off here. Just one last look at our due dates as we keep moving pretty quickly through our 8-week format. So again, finishing up Unit 3, turning around earlier next week to Unit 4, and then obviously on to our next reading in Unit 5. All right, any questions or concerns, be in touch with me, and I will talk with everybody soon.